Welcome back. I hope you all enjoyed your weekend. So today we're going to be starting 4.3, writing linear equations. Okay. So your first warm-up problem here is solve this for x. Okay. 8 equals x minus 5. And then your other one is 10 equals 2 minus 4x. Now these are written on your notes, so feel free to either pause it or go back. So there they are both if you want to pause it right there. Okay. So you have a little bit of writing. So I would, if you write your own notes, you might want to kind of keep both forms so that way you don't have to write absolutely everything. So this little chunk that I'm reading right here, let me grab another piece of paper, cover up some stuff. So it says recall. So this is remembering what we learned last week. So the slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. Okay, remember that formula we learned about, and that should be on your note card. Okay. The reason it's called slope-intercept form is because it's easy to see what the slope is. That's the number in front of x, or m. Okay, and the y-intercept is b, whatever is being added to the x part or subtracted, depending on the problem. Some equations, though, are not in the form of y equals mx plus b, so we're going to make them into that form so we can easily find the slope and the y-intercept. Okay, so remember, y equals mx plus b. Sorry, you guys can't see that very well. My m is my slope, and b is my y-intercept. Okay, and I shorten intercept to int, just so I don't have to write out intercept all the time. Lots of shortcuts in math. So, the first question is, I know it's really small, but typing the notes is easier right now. So put the equations into slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, and identify the slope and the y-intercept. So if I zoom in here, this is the equation I'm looking at. Now notice it is not in y equals mx plus b form. So I have to make it y equals mx plus b form. Okay. So I have y plus 2x minus 6 equals 0. So basically my whole goal is to get y by itself. Okay. So the first thing I'll do is I'll just move my constant over. Okay, and I like my little dotted line so I know one side of the equals versus the other. So I get y plus 2x equals 6. Sorry, I kind of scrunched this over on this side, but no biggie. Now I'm still continuing. I want y by itself, and the 2x is stopping y from being by itself. So I subtract 2x because I want this to be able to cancel. Subtract 2x. So this cancels, so I get y equals. Now please be very, very careful. The 6 minus 2, I can't get that to be 4, okay? These are two totally different terms. They are not like terms, so I just have to rewrite it. Negative 2x plus 6, because 6 has a positive sign in front of it. And I want it to be the x part first. Oops, you guys can't see that. The x part first and then the constant, okay? So when I add things like this over here, they're actually not being combined. I just rewrite them left to right. Okay, that's going to be a big error that a lot of people make. So now I have this nice formula, y equals negative 2x plus 6. This is in y equals mx plus b form because it's got y equals my slope times x plus some number. Okay. So these little boxes here ask you to identify the slope. So what is the slope in this problem? And that's always going to be the number that's in front of x. Okay. So the slope is negative 2. And the y-intercept is what's being added or subtracted to the problem. And I keep the sign of whatever it is. So if it would have been a subtraction sign, it would have been minus. So the y-intercept is 6. Okay. So once you get it in the y equals mx plus b form, they want you to identify the slope and identify the y-intercept. All right. A very similar problem. Now this one, it says, please be careful when there's a coefficient in front of y. Remember, coefficient just means a number in front of the variable. So when we're solving something like this, we need to be very careful. So I'm going to zoom in so you guys can see everything. So I have 5x plus 4y equals 8. Okay. Now the first thing I want to get y by itself. So this 5x is stopping it. So I'm going to subtract 5x from both sides. So again, this cancels and I'm left with 4y equals, and again I cannot combine these terms here because they are, one is a constant and one is an x, so I just am going to write it minus 5x plus 8. I always want to write the x first just because that's the form that I'm doing, okay? Now comes the little tricky part here. Okay, so the 4 is stopping y from being by itself. So I'm going to divide both sides by 4. Now when I divide this side by 4, I don't want to have one big fraction because then I'm not going to be able to see what the slope and the y-intercept is. So I'm going to divide each individual piece by 4. This means the same thing, I'm just breaking it apart. Okay, so be very careful with something like that. So I get y equals, now I'm going to write this negative 5/4 as just a fraction. Okay, x, those are the same things, it means the same things. Negative 5x divided by 4 is the same as negative 5/4 times x. Okay, it's just written slightly differently. Now if I look at 8/4, I can reduce that fraction. Okay, make my life slightly easier. So 8 divided by 4 is 2. Okay, so now I have y equals mx plus b. Okay, it's a nice problem. We have it all set up, okay? So just please be very careful when there's a coefficient in front of y, you divide each piece by 4, okay? Or whatever numbers, whatever the coefficient is. If it was 5, I'd divide each piece by 5, and so on and so forth, okay? And then reduce the fractions. Okay, so if I look at this, I'll rewrite it over here. Plus 2, wow, I wrote it really tiny. Okay, so negative 5/4 x plus 2. So think for a second, you guys should know this by now. What is the slope? What is the y-intercept? So this would be negative 5/4. I didn't really give you guys enough room to write it there, but it is a fraction. And then 2 is my y-intercept. Remember, slope, intercept. The y-intercept to be specific. Okay, m and b. All right, let's keep going here. We have one more example similar to this. Okay. So I have 5y minus x equals 15. Okay, so again, I'm just going to kind of write this a little bit bigger. Okay, first thing I want to do to get y by itself is I'm going to add x to both sides. And again, I like to write that x first just so it's in the right form. Then I'm going to divide each piece by 5, remember, so I have that individualness. Now remember, there's an invisible 1 in front of my x. So I really have 1/5 x plus, and then 15 divided by 5 is 3. Okay. Now I don't have the lines for this problem for whatever reason. So my slope, remember, is the number in front of x is 1/5. And then my y-intercept is whatever's being added, which would be 3. Okay. And just, let's say I had the problem, I solved it all, and I got y equals 1/5 x minus 3. The slope is 1/5 still, but the y-intercept is negative 3, because I have to take that subtraction sign with me, okay? So be very careful. If it's y equals mx minus whatever it is, you need to take that sign with you too, okay? So just beware. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go backwards. So I kind of gave you the hard stuff at the beginning, and now this stuff should be relatively easy for you. Okay? So now we're going to go backwards. I'm going to give you the slope and y-intercept, and I want you to write the equation in slope-intercept form. Okay, the y equals mx plus b. So if I look at this one right here, so if slope is 1/4 and y is 3, so I have y equals mx plus b. And remember, slope is m and y-intercept is b. So I get y equals 1/4 x plus 3. Wham bam, and you're done. So we kind of already did this last week a little bit. Okay, again, y equals mx plus b. And if you just keep rewriting that formula over and over and over again, you're going to remember it, okay? Y equals negative 2 is my slope, which is my m, and y-intercept is my b. X. So I could write plus a negative 5, or I could write y equals negative 2x minus 5. Okay, so either answer would be correct. Okay, it just depends on how you want to write it. Okay, so your exit slip is to write the slope-intercept equation for slope equals 4 and y equals, or the y-intercept is 7. So you should be able to do it from those two examples. And then your homework is page 164, number 1 through 5 all. If you need me to check the evens, I would be happy to do so. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye.